I thought I'd make a photography video because Sean Rambles with My Camera's been making a lot of photography videos, and I've just watched one about manual, whether you use manual or not, and he seems to be getting a kind of a bee in his bonnet about using manual if it makes you more of a photographer. When you first get a DSLR camera, you do generally learn it. I guess a lot of people just stick it on auto, but they don't really want to learn the every ins and outs of the camera. A bit like Americans, really. They drive cars on automatic, and they don't know how to use a gear shift, a manual gear shift. But they can still drive cars, and they've been driving for years. And at the end of the day, if you get from point A to point B, that's all that counts, really, to get from point A to point B. And if you're a perfectionist, you might say to yourself, I want to get from point A to point B in the most elegant way I can, which is fair enough. Some people have that need to do things the elegant way. Well, I personally started off in video, and I went to DSLR because I like the look of DSLR video, and because there was more possibility of controlling the shot. And so I did learn how to use the manual, read the manual and used the manual. I always use manual for video, for example. I would never use automatic for video unless it's maybe walking around or something. But the more I used the DSLR camera for video, the more I started using it for photographs. And I find now that I enjoy doing the photographs more than video in a way. And I've done a lot of pictures. I've already worn out one shutter. I think I got the shutter count up to 200,000 already and wore out the shutter. And luckily my camera was still on warranty by about 4 days, and I got the shutter replaced free. And one of the reasons I take so many pictures is that I always take 3 pictures for every picture. I use what's called AEB, or auto exposure bracketing, and that means the camera takes 3 pictures, boom, 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 one after the other very quickly, and it takes 1 picture with a low exposure, 1 picture with a correct exposure, and 1 picture with a bright exposure. And then afterwards I mix them together on the computer with a program and do a HDR picture, high dynamic range. And because you've got 3 times as much information in the picture, then you can get it to be much more snappy in my mind. And a lot of, I won't say camera snobs, but I would say a lot of people poo-poo this HDR. And I agree, it's like putting salt on your food. A little bit of salt is great on food, but too much and you ruin it. And that's the same with HDR. A little tiny bit is good, just to bring out the dynamic range, because a camera has got a certain limited dynamic range compared to your eye. And what makes me laugh really is people who get on the high horse and say, oh, this HDR, it's not real photography, it's cheating somehow. But the same people always say, shoot in RAW because you've got more dynamic range. Well, you have, but not as much dynamic range as you have with 3 pictures, but you've still got more dynamic range. And at the end of the day, if you're shooting in RAW, you put it into your computer exactly the same, and you start messing about with the levels till you get to look right. And so you're manipulating the picture even more than you would do than if you had taken 3 pictures and using 3 original pictures to create the final image. you're doing more manipulation with one image by messing about with all the sliders, changing the exposure, changing the tone, the shadows. You can do myriad things with the raw photograph. And these perfectionists or purists, if you really want to go back to basics, then you've got to get a film and do it with a black box with just a pinhole in it, because that means you've got no control over it at all. Then you're just getting the pure analog image. But we're working in digital now, and it's all just numbers. So whether you go into a program and start fiddling about with the controls, or you let the manufacturer of your camera, with the algorithm that's in your camera, when it comes out of the camera, it comes out to an algorithm. When the people at Sony, the people at Canon, the people at Nikon have said, okay, this value is that, this value is that, this value is that, and that's how the picture's going to come out. And you can say, I just taking pictures straight from the camera. But there, once again, you're just relying on the machine, on the camera. So there's so many arguments, and every single one can be hit down, thrown down. The purist can be made to look a fool. The person taking auto can be made to look a fool. It's all about your personal choice, and at the end of the day, it's how the picture comes out. And I think more should be said about what goes into the picture rather than the machine and the process that goes into creating it from the real world, changing it into lots of ones and zeros, and start defining a little bit what a picture is. And that's where I think you've got to go into your brain a little bit and think about how people see things. And when I was not spending all my time on computers, I used to spend a lot more time drawing pictures. And one thing I often used to think about, I had a theory about it, and it's called instinctive vision. And instinctive vision is certain things that pull your eyes straight away into it. And it's instinctive because for millions of years, your brain has also been programmed into recognizing things. For example, the eye, the camera looking at you, the little eye looking at you. As soon as somebody points a camera at you, you feel it. You can feel it from the side in your peripheral vision. And that comes from the fear of the predator. That's the fear of the tiger sitting in the bushes watching you. And that's one instinctive vision. Boom, you see an eye watching you. You look at it straight away. You recognize that. It's a point. And it's a kind of an instinctive vision. It pulls you towards it before you can think. And another thing is sex. A heterosexual man is instinctively attracted to the shape of a woman. You watch any bloke in a supermarket or something, and a girl walks past who's beautiful. Boom, the eyes are straight on there. That form, instinctive vision. Or for a woman, or for a man, or for a homosexual, whatever is bent is there is some kind of instinctual vision which makes that form stand out in your brain and goes boom and brings it straight into your brain, and you focus on it. And that's what you've got to learn, I think, with photography. It's this instinctive vision. You always know, if you're out in the country somewhere and there's a beautiful view, you always kind of position yourself to look at it and go, wow, that is beautiful there. And that's a kind of instinctive vision. We've got an instinctive vision for beauty as well. And that instinctive vision is already learned in your head, but often you've got to forget lots of other things that you've learned to let this instinctive vision come out. And often if you're out in doing landscape photography, which is I like doing best, or I like to do architectural photography too, I often find that the first 2 or 3 photographs that I've taken are the best ones, because I'm using my instinctive vision. And then I start to think, would this be good? Would this be good? And sometimes they are. But often the very first shot, the very first gut feeling that this is right, this picture's right, boom, and often that's the best shot. And so I think you should, instead of worrying about whether you're taking pictures with manual or automatic, or what sort of camera you've got, or what kind of lights you've got, or what kind of shoes or rucksack or lens you're using, you should think about this instinctive vision. You should start thinking more, what is it that makes a picture in a brain? What is it? What is a picture? This is what you've got to think about to get a good photograph, in my mind. It's nothing to do with the equipment. It's what's going on in there. Instinctive vision. And yeah, I think I'll leave it at that, because I've not really thought this out. I'm just letting it stream of consciousness come out. But another couple of things to remember as well, which is a massive mistake that lots of people make, is make sure your goddamn lens is clean. You might have a bit of a stain on there, a raindrop, a bit of fluff, and you ruin all your pictures. Every picture you take will be ruined. Make sure your lens is clean. It's really simple. And these days, most people use automatic focus because it's so good, and DSLR cameras are not so good for focusing with your eye, because they don't have the little scale that they used to have in SLRs. Now you tend to rely more on this on the autofocus because it's so good. And always remember to check that your autofocus button is on, the AF button, and not the MF, unless you want to use MF, of course. But make sure it's on, because I've gone out loads of times and I've been doing something like taking a photograph here in the studio, had it all on manual because I'm under total control. I can even measure out the distance to get the focus perfect. And then I go out the next day and I forgot to turn that little switch on, and it looks okay through the lens, but then when I get home, everything's out of focus because I forgot to do the switch. So I would say worry about dirt on your lens, turning that switch on, and think about your instinctive vision before you start worrying about the details of your camera. Which button am I using? Which program am I using? Instinctive vision, that's the one to look for, I think. And that will make your photographs more your photographs. They'll be your photographs. There won't be a photograph by a Nikon, a Sony, a Kodak. They'll be your photographs, because you're not thinking about the camera. You're thinking about the picture that is on your retina, that's coming in from the world. That's where you've got to base your thoughts, I think. Thanks for watching. Have a great day and happy snapping.